Daniel Harper was a man who had everything, except peace. His mansion stood tall on the edge of the city, its grandeur admired by everyone who passed by. But inside those polished walls lived a man burdened by grief and guilt. 3 years ago, his life had been perfect. He had a thriving business, a beautiful wife named Emily, and a son, Ethan, whose laughter used to fill every corner of their home. Then came the accident, a rainy night that stole Emily away forever. Since then, Daniel threw himself into work, building his company into an empire. Every deal closed, every meeting attended, was a distraction from the emptiness gnawing at him. Yet no matter how much money he made or how many accolades he received, nothing could bring back what he lost. Worst of all was Ethan. Once a bright, curious boy who loved running around with toy cars and asking endless questions, Ethan now seemed like a shadow of his former self. The sparkle in his eyes was gone, replaced by a silence so heavy it felt suffocating. Daniel tried everything to help his son. Therapists came and went, each promising breakthroughs that never materialized. Toys piled up in Ethan's room, untouched. Books sat unread on shelves. Even weekends spent trying to bond over puzzles or games ended in frustration for both father and son. Ethan rarely spoke anymore, and when he did, it was only in whispers, as if afraid to disturb the quiet world he'd built around himself. It broke Daniel's heart, but he didn't know how to fix it. The weight of being a single parent while running a multi-million-dollar company crushed Daniel. Most days he barely had time to eat, let alone sit down and talk to Ethan. Guilt haunted him constantly. Was he failing as a father? Should he have done more to prevent Emily's death? These thoughts swirled endlessly in his mind, leaving him exhausted and defeated. One evening, after another fruitless therapy session where Ethan refused to engage, with the counselor, Daniel sat in his study staring blankly at papers scattered across his desk. His phone buzzed incessantly with emails and calls, but he ignored them. Instead, he thought about Ethan sitting alone upstairs, lost in his own little world. Something had to change. But what? Reluctantly, Daniel decided to hire a nanny. He hated the idea of bringing someone else into their lives, fearing it might make things worse. Still, he couldn't keep going like this. So, he posted an ad online, specifying that experience with children was essential. Over the next few days, several candidates arrived for interviews, each eager to impress. Some were too formal, others overly casual, but none seemed right. Just as Daniel began to lose hope, Clara Bennett walked through the door. Clara wasn't like the others. She carried herself with confidence, yet radiated warmth. Her resume listed degrees in early childhood education and years of experience working with kids of all ages. But it was her smile that caught Daniel's attention, a genuine, kind smile that hinted at patience and understanding. During the interview, she spoke passionately about helping children find their voices and rediscover joy. When she mentioned creating activities tailored to each child's interests, Daniel found himself leaning forward, intrigued. Afterward, as Clara left the house, Daniel lingered in the doorway, watching her go. For the first time in months, he felt a flicker of optimism. Maybe Clara could reach Ethan in ways he couldn't. Maybe she could bring some light back into their darkened home. But even as hope stirred within him, doubt lingered. Could anyone truly heal the wounds left behind by such profound loss? Only time would tell. That night, as Daniel tucked Ethan into bed, he noticed something unusual. Ethan glanced toward the staircase, perhaps wondering about the stranger who had visited earlier. "We'll see how it goes," Daniel murmured softly, though he wasn't sure whether he was reassuring Ethan or himself. As he turned off the light, he couldn't shake the feeling that this decision, hiring Clara, might be the beginning of something new. Whether it would be good or bad remained to be seen. The day Clara Bennett officially started her role as Ethan's nanny marked a subtle yet significant shift in the Harper household. From the moment she stepped inside, carrying a tote bag filled with art supplies, books, and small trinkets for Ethan, it was clear that she wasn't just there to babysit, she was there to make a difference. Daniel watched quietly from his study window as Clara knelt down to greet Ethan, her voice soft and inviting. Ethan, however, didn't respond. He simply stared at her, clutching a stuffed bear tightly against his chest. Clara didn't seem discouraged by his silence. Instead, she smiled warmly and began unpacking her things on the living room floor. "I brought some fun stuff today," she said cheerfully, laying out colored pencils, paper, and a jar of stickers shaped like animals. "Do you like drawing? Or maybe you'd rather read a story first?" Ethan blinked but didn't move. Clara didn't push him. Instead, she picked up a pencil and started sketching a simple tree on one of the sheets of paper. Slowly, Ethan glanced over, curiosity flickering in his eyes. For the next hour, Clara worked patiently, narrating her actions aloud as if speaking to an invisible audience. "This is a tree," she said, adding leaves with green strokes. "And here comes a bird flying by." She drew a tiny bird perched on a branch, then added a sun peeking out from behind clouds. Ethan remained silent, but his gaze lingered longer, each time Clara spoke. When she finished, she held up the picture and asked, "What do you think? Should we add a rainbow?" To Daniel's astonishment, Ethan nodded almost imperceptibly. It was the smallest gesture, but it felt monumental. Over the following days, Clara continued to weave magic into their routine. Each morning she greeted Ethan with enthusiasm, no matter how unresponsive he seemed. One day she introduced music, playing gentle tunes on a small keyboard she'd brought along. Another day she set up a mini science experiment in the kitchen, mixing baking soda and vinegar to create fizzy bubbles that made Ethan's lips twitch upward ever so slightly. These moments were fleeting, but they hinted at progress. One particularly memorable afternoon, Clara decided to take Ethan outside. The garden hadn't been tended to in years, overrun with weeds and wildflowers. Clara grabbed 2 pairs of gardening gloves and handed one to Ethan. "Let's see if we can find some treasures out here," she suggested, pointing to the overgrown patch near the fence. At first, Ethan hesitated, standing awkwardly beside her. But when Clara bent down to unearth a shiny pebble, Ethan cautiously joined in. As they dug through the soil together, Clara chatted lightly about random topics: her favorite ice cream, flavor, the antics of squirrels climbing trees, and even the weather. Ethan didn't say a word, but he listened. His movements grew bolder as he discovered rocks, twigs, and even a rusted toy car buried beneath layers of dirt. By the end of the afternoon, both of them were covered in mud, but Ethan wore the faintest trace of a smile, a sight Daniel hadn't seen in years. Inside the house, changes began to unfold too. Clara rearranged Ethan's playroom, transforming it from a cluttered storage space into a vibrant haven of creativity. She hung up posters of animals and planets, set up a cozy reading corner with beanbags, and organized toys into colorful bins labeled with pictures. Every detail was intentional, designed to spark interest and invite exploration. Gradually, Ethan started spending more time in the room, though he still preferred observing to participating. Daniel noticed these shifts, but struggled to reconcile his emotions. On one hand, he was grateful for Clara's efforts. Watching her connect with Ethan in ways he couldn't ignited a glimmer of hope within him. Yet, on the other hand, he couldn't shake off a growing sense of inadequacy. Why wasn't he the one making Ethan laugh? Why did it feel like Clara was stepping into a role meant for him? Despite his internal conflict, Daniel found himself drawn to Clara's presence. There was something magnetic about her calm demeanor and unwavering dedication. She never complained about long hours or challenging situations. Instead, she approached every task with grace and humor, often finding clever ways to lighten the mood. For instance, during dinner prep one evening, she donned an apron decorated with cartoon cats and declared herself head chef extraordinaire. As she stirred pasta sauce, she pretended to trip dramatically, eliciting giggles from Ethan, and even a chuckle from Daniel, who happened to walk in at that moment. It was during these rare bursts of laughter that Daniel allowed himself to imagine a different future. What if Ethan could heal completely? What if their home could once again echo with joy instead of sorrow? These thoughts fueled him, pushing him to try harder. Inspired by Clara's example, Daniel began carving out more time for Ethan. He joined, them on weekend outings to parks, museums, and even a local petting zoo where Ethan tentatively stroked a rabbit's fur. Though awkward at first, Daniel gradually relaxed, letting go of his rigid schedule and embracing spontaneity. One Saturday morning, Clara suggested painting rocks in the garden as a family activity. Armed with brushes and paint, they spread out, on a picnic blanket under the shade of a large oak tree. Clara painted whimsical designs, a smiling sun, a striped zebra, while Ethan experimented with swirls of color. Daniel, hesitant at first, eventually joined in, creating a clumsy but heartfelt rendition of a rocket ship. As they worked side by side, Clara encouraged Ethan to name his creations. "What should we call this one?" she asked, pointing to a rock splashed with blue and yellow. After a pause, Ethan whispered, "Sky." The word hung in the air, fragile yet powerful. Daniel froze, staring at his son in disbelief. Clara beamed, clapping softly. "That's perfect, Ethan. Sky it is." For the first time in years, Daniel heard his son speak. Not in fragments or whispers, but clearly, confidently. Tears pricked his eyes, but he blinked them away, unwilling to break the spell of the moment. By the end of the day, the garden was dotted with painted rocks, each one a testament to their shared effort. As Clara packed up the supplies, Daniel lingered, watching Ethan examine the rocks with newfound pride. A strange warmth spread through Daniel's chest, melting away some of the ice that had encased his heart for so long. Maybe, just maybe, things were beginning to change for all of them. As weeks turned into months, Clara's presence in the Harper household became more than just a source of comfort. It became a catalyst for transformation. Each day brought new opportunities for connection, creativity, and growth, not only for Ethan, but also for Daniel. Yet amidst the progress, challenges lingered, testing their resilience and forcing them to confront emotions they had long buried. Clara's approach was methodical, yet intuitive. She observed Ethan closely, noting his preferences and reactions, then tailored activities to suit his interests. For instance, when she noticed how fascinated he was by rhythm during one of their music sessions, she introduced him to a small toy drum set. At first, Ethan hesitated, unsure of what to do with the unfamiliar instrument. But Clara didn't rush him. Instead, she sat beside him, tapping out simple beats with her hands. "Listen," she said, smiling as she alternated between slow and fast rhythms. "What does this sound like, a train chugging along or raindrops falling?" Ethan watched intently, his fingers twitching slightly. Then, tentatively, he reached out and tapped the drum once. The sound startled him at first, but Clara cheered enthusiastically. "That was awesome. Want to try again?" Encouraged by her praise, Ethan tapped again, this time with more confidence. Before long, he was creating his own patterns, his face lighting up with concentration and delight. It was a breakthrough moment, one that filled Daniel with both pride and bittersweet longing. He couldn't help but wonder why he hadn't thought of something so simple yet impactful. Art continued to play a central role in their days together. Clara often set up easels in the garden, encouraging Ethan to paint whatever came to mind. Sometimes he painted abstract swirls of color. Other times, he attempted recognizable shapes like houses or trees. Whatever he created, Clara celebrated it wholeheartedly, hanging his artwork on the walls of the playroom. "This is your gallery," she told him one afternoon, gesturing to the colorful display. Every artist needs a place to showcase their masterpieces. But perhaps the most profound change occurred during bedtime stories. Clara made it a ritual to read aloud every night, choosing books with engaging illustrations and relatable characters. At first, Ethan listened silently, curled up under his blankets. Over time, however, he began chiming in with quiet comments or questions. One evening, as Clara read about a brave boy who overcame his fears to rescue a lost puppy, Ethan whispered, "I'm scared sometimes too." His admission caught Clara off guard, but she handled it with care. "It's okay to feel scared," she replied gently. "Even brave people get scared. What matters is what you do next." Daniel overheard the conversation from the hallway, his heart swelling with emotion. He realized that Clara wasn't just entertaining Ethan. She was teaching him how to navigate his feelings, how to find strength in vulnerability. It was a lesson Daniel himself needed to learn. For years he had bottled up his grief, burying it beneath layers of work and responsibility. But seeing Clara guide Ethan with such empathy inspired him to open up, if only a little. Their relationship deepened further when Clara encouraged Daniel to join in on their activities. Initially he resisted, feeling out of place and unsure of how to contribute. But Clara persisted, inviting him to participate in ways that felt natural. During one particularly memorable session, she handed him a paintbrush and challenged him to create a family portrait. "No pressure," she teased, "just have fun with it." Daniel laughed nervously but accepted the challenge, sketching stick figures that somehow managed to resemble him, Ethan, and even Clara. When Ethan giggled at the lopsided smile on Dad's face, Daniel felt a surge of warmth, a reminder that imperfection could still bring joy. Despite the progress, tensions occasionally surfaced. Clara, ever perceptive, noticed how hard Daniel pushed himself to balance work and family life. Late nights at his desk were common, and though he tried to be present during the day, fatigue often showed on his face. One evening, after putting Ethan to bed, Clara approached Daniel in his study. "You're doing great," she said softly, leaning against the doorway. "But you don't have to carry everything alone. Let me help." Her words struck a chord. Daniel looked up from his laptop, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. I don't know how," he admitted, his tone heavy with frustration. "Emily always knew what to do. I'm just fumbling through this." Clara stepped closer, her expression compassionate. "None of us has all the answers, Daniel. Not even Emily did. Parenting is messy and it's okay to ask for support. You're already giving Ethan so much by being here, even if it doesn't feel like enough sometimes." Her reassurance brought tears to Daniel's eyes, though he quickly blinked them away. For the first time, he allowed himself to lean on someone else, to trust that sharing the burden wouldn't make him weak. That night, he shut down his computer earlier than usual and joined Clara in the living room, where they talked about everything and nothing. They shared stories about their childhoods, their dreams, and even their fears. The conversation flowed effortlessly, bridging the gap between employer and employee, forging a bond that went beyond professional boundaries. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to blossom under Clara's care. His vocabulary expanded, and he started initiating conversations rather than waiting to be prompted. One sunny afternoon, while they were building a sandcastle at the beach, he turned to Clara and asked, "Why are you so nice?" The question caught her off guard, but she smiled warmly. "Because you deserve it, Ethan. Everyone deserves kindness." Daniel, watching from a nearby bench, felt a lump rise in his throat. He marveled at how effortlessly Clara connected with his son, how she saw the good in him even when he doubted it existed. Her influence extended far beyond Ethan. It reached Daniel too, reminding him of the person he used to be before grief consumed him. Yet, as much as Daniel appreciated Clara's impact, he couldn't ignore the growing complexity of his feelings. There were moments when he caught himself staring at her, admiring the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed or the way her voice softened when she spoke to Ethan. He found excuses to spend more time with her, whether it was helping clean up after art projects or joining her for coffee breaks. But each time their hands accidentally brushed or their gazes met for a beat too long, guilt gnawed at him. Was it wrong to feel this way about someone who had become such an integral part of their lives? Clara, for her part, seemed equally conflicted. She adored Ethan and admired Daniel's determination to be a better father, but she wrestled with her own emotions. Falling for an employer, and especially a grieving widower, wasn't part of her plan. Still, she couldn't deny the connection they shared, the unspoken understanding that passed between them during quiet moments. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Clara finally voiced her concerns. "I care about you both so much," she said hesitantly, twisting a strand of hair around her finger. "But I worry that I'm overstepping. This job, it's supposed to be about Ethan, not about me." Daniel reached out, placing a hand over hers. You're not overstepping, Clara. You've given us something we desperately needed. Hope. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel something more for you. His confession hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. Clara's breath hitched, tears welling in her eyes. I feel it too, she admitted. But we have to think about Ethan. We can't rush anything, Daniel nodded, squeezing her hand gently. We'll take it slow. For now, let's focus on rebuilding what we've lost. For all of us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the yard, Daniel felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but with Clara by his side, he believed they could face it together. And for the first time in years, he dared to dream of a future filled with laughter, love, and healing. The delicate balance between Daniel, Clara, and Ethan began to shift as their lives intertwined more deeply. While Clara's presence brought light and laughter back into the Harper household, it also stirred emotions that neither she nor Daniel had anticipated. Their growing bond was undeniable, yet navigating these feelings required care, patience, and an unwavering focus on Ethan's well-being. Daniel's business empire faced its own challenges during this time. A rival company launched a hostile takeover attempt, threatening everything he had worked so hard to build. The stress weighed heavily on him, pulling him away from home for extended periods as he traveled to meetings and negotiated deals. Despite his exhaustion, Daniel refused to let work consume him entirely. Not when Ethan was finally showing signs of healing. But balancing his responsibilities became increasingly difficult, especially with Clara's role in their lives evolving. Beyond that of a nanny, Clara stepped up without hesitation, ensuring Ethan felt secure even in Daniel's absence. She maintained their daily routines, filling the house with music, art projects, and playful activities. On weekends, she took Ethan to parks, museums, and local markets, introducing him to new experiences while giving Daniel space to handle his mounting workload. Yet, despite her best efforts, there were moments when Ethan seemed unsettled by his father's frequent trips. One evening, after Daniel returned late from another business meeting, Ethan approached him hesitantly, clutching a drawing he had made earlier that day. "Is this you?" Daniel asked, examining the picture closely. It depicted a stick figure holding a briefcase standing far away from two smaller figures labeled Ethan and Clara. His heart sank as he realized what the drawing represented: his son's fear of being left behind. Kneeling down to Ethan's level, Daniel placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry I've been gone so much lately," he said softly. "But no matter where I go, you're always with me. Always." Ethan nodded slowly, but the look in his eyes suggested he needed more than words. Sensing the moment, Clara joined them, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside Ethan. "Your dad is working really hard right now," she explained gently. "But guess what? He loves coming home because of you. You make every trip worth it." Her reassurance seemed to ease some of Ethan's worry, and he leaned into her side, seeking comfort. These small exchanges highlighted the unique dynamic forming within their trio. Clara wasn't just a caregiver, she was becoming a stabilizing force, someone who understood both Daniel's struggles and Ethan's needs. Her ability to mediate between them created a sense of unity that hadn't existed before. Still, Daniel couldn't ignore the undercurrent of attraction simmering beneath the surface. Every shared glance, every accidental brush of hands, reminded him of how much he relied on her, not just as a nanny, but as a partner in navigating life's chaos. One rainy afternoon, as Clara helped Ethan assemble a model airplane at the dining table, Daniel walked in unexpectedly early from a meeting. Seeing them together, their heads bent close as they worked collaboratively, filled him with a mix of gratitude and longing. He cleared his throat to announce his arrival, and both turned to greet him with smiles. "Looks like I missed something exciting," he said, ruffling Ethan's hair affectionately. Clara stood up, brushing bits of glue off her fingers. "We saved a piece for you," she teased, handing him a tiny plastic propeller. Her playful tone eased the tension in the room, but Daniel couldn't shake the intensity of his feelings. That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Daniel found himself lingering in the kitchen, watching Clara wash dishes. "You didn't have to stay late tonight," he said, leaning against the counter. "I know you've done more than enough already." Clara shrugged, rinsing a plate under the faucet. "It's not about doing enough, it's about being here for all of you." She paused, glancing over her shoulder at him. "Besides, I care about Ethan, and I care about you too." Her admission caught Daniel off guard, though it shouldn't have. He had suspected her feelings mirrored his own, but hearing her say it aloud made it real. Stepping closer, he rested a hand on the edge of the sink, his voice barely above a whisper. "I care about you too, Clara. More than I should, maybe. But I can't help it." For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain tapping against the windows filled the silence, punctuated only by the rhythmic clinking of dishes. Finally, Clara turned to face him fully, her expression soft but resolute. "We can't rush this, Daniel. Ethan comes first. Always." "I know," he replied, nodding. "And I wouldn't want it any other way, but does that mean we have to pretend these feelings don't exist?" Clara hesitated, then shook her head. "No. Pretending won't help anyone. We just need to be careful, thoughtful. Let things unfold naturally, without putting pressure on ourselves or Ethan." Their agreement marked a turning point. From that day forward, they allowed themselves to acknowledge their connection, albeit cautiously. They exchanged quiet smiles across breakfast tables, lingered a little longer during conversations, and occasionally held hands when no one was looking. These moments were fleeting, but meaningful, offering glimpses of a future they dared to dream about. At the same time, Ethan continued to thrive under Clara's guidance. His confidence grew steadily, evident in the way he interacted with others and expressed himself. During a weekend outing to a local petting zoo, Ethan surprised everyone by initiating a conversation with a group of children his age. He introduced Clara as my friend, and proudly showed off the rabbit he was holding. Watching from a distance, Daniel felt a surge of pride and relief. For years he had feared Ethan might never recover from the trauma of losing Emily. Now seeing him laugh and engage with the world again gave Daniel hope that healing was possible, for all of them. However, the journey wasn't without its hurdles. Daniel's business troubles escalated, forcing him to travel even more frequently. Each departure weighed heavily on him, knowing how much Ethan depended on stability. One particularly grueling week, after returning from a high-stakes negotiation, Daniel collapsed onto the couch, exhausted and defeated. Clara joined him shortly afterward, carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea. "You look like you could use this," she said, handing him one. He accepted it gratefully, taking a deep sip before speaking. "I don't know how much longer I can keep fighting, Clara. This company, it's everything I've built, but sometimes it feels like it's tearing me apart." She listened intently, her gaze steady and supportive. "You're stronger than you think, Daniel, and you're not alone. Remember that. You have people who believe in you, including me." Her words resonated deeply, reigniting a spark of determination within him. With Clara's encouragement, Daniel devised a bold strategy to counteract the rival company's takeover attempt. It involved long hours and risky decisions, but he threw himself into the challenge with renewed vigor. Throughout the process, Clara remained a constant source of strength, cheering him on and reminding him to take breaks when needed. Even Ethan got involved, creating motivational posters that read, "Go Dad," and hanging them around the house. When the dust finally settled, Daniel emerged victorious. Not only had he thwarted the takeover attempt, but he had also secured lucrative partnerships that strengthened his company's position. The victory was sweet, but it paled in comparison to the personal growth he experienced along the way. Through Clara's unwavering support, he learned to trust others, delegate responsibilities, and prioritize his family above all else. As life returned to a semblance of normalcy, Daniel reflected on how far they had come. What began as a desperate attempt to help Ethan heal had transformed into something greater, a second chance at love, happiness, and fulfillment. With Clara by his side, he believed anything was possible. And as he watched Ethan chase butterflies, In the garden, laughing freely for the first time in years, Daniel knew they had truly changed everything, for the better. The turning point in Daniel, Clara, and Ethan's lives came on a crisp autumn evening, bathed in the golden hues of a setting sun. The air carried a chill, but inside the Harper household, warmth radiated from every corner. It wasn't just the cozy fire crackling in the living room hearth or the aroma of freshly baked cookies wafting through the halls. It was the unspoken bond that had grown between them, a connection that felt almost magical. Daniel had returned home earlier than usual after successfully finalizing the deal that secured his company's future. For weeks he had been consumed by work, battling sleepless nights and high-stakes negotiations. But now, as he stepped into the house, he felt lighter, freer. The weight of uncertainty had lifted, replaced by a sense of accomplishment and gratitude. As he hung up his coat, he heard laughter coming from the kitchen. Following the sound, he found Clara and Ethan decorating cookies with colorful icing and sprinkles. Clara glanced up, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Welcome back, Mr. CEO," she teased, holding up a cookie shaped like a star. "Care to join our masterpiece-making session?" Ethan looked up too, his eyes bright with excitement. "Dad, we made one for you," he exclaimed, pointing to a cookie decorated with blue icing and silver sprinkles. It wasn't perfect. The edges were uneven, and some of the sprinkles had fallen off. But it was clear they had put their hearts into it. Daniel smiled, feeling a lump rise in his throat. "That's the best-looking cookie I've ever seen," he said, ruffling Ethan's hair. He pulled out a chair and joined them, at the table, picking up a piping bag filled with red icing. "Let me show you how it's done." What followed was an hour of playful chaos. Flour dusted their clothes, icing smeared across countertops, and laughter echoed through the room. At one point, Daniel accidentally squirted green icing onto Clara's cheek, prompting Ethan to burst into giggles. Clara retaliated by flicking a sprinkle at Daniel, which only escalated into a full-blown sprinkle war. By the time they finished, all three of them were covered in sticky remnants of their culinary adventure. But none of them had ever felt happier. As they cleaned up together, Daniel couldn't help but marvel at how different his life felt now compared to months ago. Back then, joy seemed like a distant memory, something locked away behind walls of grief and guilt. Now it flowed freely, thanks in large part to Clara. Her presence wasn't just about filling gaps, it was about creating new possibilities, building bridges where there had once been chasms. That night, after Ethan had gone to bed, Daniel and Clara sat together on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool breeze. The silence between them was comfortable, punctuated only by the rustle of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. Finally, Daniel broke the quiet. "I don't think I've ever told you this," he began, his voice soft but steady. "But you saved us, both of us. When I hired you, I didn't know what to expect. I just hoped you could reach Ethan in ways I couldn't. But you did so much more than that. You brought light back into our lives." Clara turned to look at him, her expression thoughtful. "I didn't save anyone, Daniel. We did this together, you, me, and Ethan. Healing isn't something one person can do alone. It takes everyone working together, supporting each other." Her words resonated deeply, yet they also stirred something else within him, a longing he hadn't fully acknowledged, until now. Reaching out, he took her hand in his, feeling its warmth against his palm. "Clara," he said, his tone serious, "there's something I need to say, something I should have said a long time ago." She met his gaze, her eyes searching his face. "What is it?" "I love you," he confessed, the words tumbling out before he could second-guess himself. "Not just because of what you've done for Ethan or for me, but because of who you are. You're kind, patient, strong, everything I never knew I needed. And I can't imagine my life without you in it." Tears welled in Clara's eyes, and for a moment she simply stared at him, overwhelmed. Then softly she replied, "I love you too, Daniel, so much. But we have to be careful. This isn't just about us. We have to think about Ethan, about what's best for him." Daniel nodded, squeezing her hand gently. I know. And that's why I want to take things slowly, to make sure we're doing this the right way, for all of us. But I also don't want to hide how I feel anymore. Not from you, not from myself. Their conversation marked a new chapter in their relationship. From that day forward, they allowed themselves to embrace their feelings openly, though always mindful of Ethan's needs. They continued to prioritize his happiness, ensuring that any changes in their dynamic unfolded gradually and naturally. Over time, Ethan grew accustomed to seeing his father and Clara share tender moments, holding hands during walks, laughing over shared jokes, or simply sitting close together on the couch while reading stories aloud. One Saturday morning, they prepared for a family outing to a pumpkin patch. Ethan approached Clara with a shy smile. In his hands, he held a handmade card, its edges slightly crumpled from being folded and unfolded multiple times. "This is for you," he said, handing it to her. Curious, Clara opened the card and read the message inside. "Will you be my mom?" Her breath caught in her throat, and tears spilled down her cheeks. She knelt down to Ethan's level, pulling him into a tight hug. "Of course I will," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I already feel like your mom." Watching, from the doorway, Daniel felt his heart swell with pride and gratitude. In that moment, he realized how far they had all come, not just as individuals, but as a family. The wounds of the past hadn't disappeared entirely, but they had healed enough to make room for new beginnings. Over the next few weeks, Daniel and Clara began discussing the future more seriously. They talked about blending their lives completely, about creating traditions and memories that would last a lifetime. One evening, Daniel surprised Clara with a heartfelt proposal during a quiet dinner at home. He presented her with a simple yet elegant ring, saying, "You've given us so much: hope, love, a second chance. Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to give you the same?" Clara accepted without hesitation, her yes echoing through the room like a promise fulfilled. Ethan cheered enthusiastically, jumping up and down with excitement. Together, they celebrated late into the night, imagining all the adventures that lay ahead. As winter approached, preparations for the wedding began in earnest. True to their values, Daniel and Clara kept things intimate and meaningful. They chose to hold the ceremony in their backyard, surrounded by twinkling fairy lights strung between trees. Friends and family gathered to witness the union, including Emily's parents, who embraced Clara warmly, welcoming her into their extended family. On the day of the wedding, Ethan served as the ring bearer, proudly carrying the rings down the aisle in a small velvet box. As Daniel and Clara exchanged vows, their voices steady and full of conviction, Ethan stood beside them, holding both their hands tightly. It was a symbolic gesture, one that represented the bond they had forged together, a bond stronger than grief, fear, or doubt. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, applause erupted, accompanied by cheers and tears of joy. Daniel kissed Clara tenderly, sealing their commitment to each other and to the family they had built. Later that evening, as they danced under the stars, surrounded by loved ones, Daniel reflected on their journey. What had started as a desperate attempt to heal a broken home had transformed into something extraordinary, a testament to resilience, love, and the power of second chances. And as he held Clara close, watching Ethan laugh and twirl around the dance floor, Daniel knew they had truly changed everything for the better. The wedding marked the beginning of a new chapter for Daniel, Clara, and Ethan. A chapter filled with promise, laughter, and the kind of love that had once seemed impossible. But life, as they soon discovered, wasn't without its challenges. Even in moments of joy, there were lessons to learn, adjustments to make, and memories to cherish along the way. In the weeks following the wedding, their household transformed into something truly special. Clara officially moved into the Harper mansion, bringing with her not just her belongings but also an infectious energy that brightened every corner of the home. She hung photos of their wedding day on the walls alongside Ethan's artwork, creating a visual timeline of their journey together. One picture, in particular, stood out. Ethan standing between Daniel and Clara, his arms wrapped tightly around them, grinning from ear to ear. It became a symbol of their unity, a reminder of how far they had come. Their daily routines evolved too, blending tradition with innovation. Mornings started with shared breakfasts, where Ethan recounted his dreams or talked excitedly about school projects. Afternoons were reserved for activities, sometimes playful like building forts out of blankets and sometimes educational, like planting seeds in the garden. Evenings ended with family movie nights, complete with popcorn and cozy blankets. These rituals weren't elaborate, but they created a rhythm that grounded them, giving structure to their days while leaving room for spontaneity. Clara continued to nurture Ethan's growth, encouraging him to explore new interests and express himself freely. Under her guidance, he developed a passion for storytelling, often crafting tales about brave adventurers or mischievous animals. One evening during dinner, he announced, "I'm going to write a book someday." His declaration was met with cheers and applause, and Clara promised to help him start drafting his ideas. Watching his confidence soar brought immense satisfaction to both Clara and Daniel, who marveled at how much Ethan had changed since the days when silence ruled their lives. For Daniel, this period of transition was equally transformative. With Clara by his side, he learned to let go of old habits that no longer served him. He delegated more responsibilities at work, trusting his team to handle tasks he once insisted on doing himself. This newfound freedom allowed him to focus on what mattered most, being present for his family. On weekends, he joined Clara and Ethan for hikes in nearby parks, picnics by the lake, or trips to local festivals. Each outing strengthened their bond, proving that happiness didn't have to be complicated. It could be found in simple pleasures shared with loved ones. Yet blending 2 lives and 3 hearts wasn't always smooth sailing. There were moments of tension, especially as they navigated their roles within the family. Daniel occasionally struggled with feelings of inadequacy, wondering if he was doing enough to support Clara now that she was more than just a nanny. "You don't need to prove anything to me," Clara reassured him one night after a particularly long day. "We're partners, Daniel. That means we lean on each other, not compete." Her words struck a chord, helping Daniel release some of the pressure he placed on himself. Similarly, Clara faced her own doubts, particularly about balancing her identity as a stepmother with her role as a professional. When friends asked about her plans for the future, she admitted, "I want to keep teaching and mentoring kids, but I also want to focus on Ethan." Balancing those priorities isn't easy, but it's worth it. Through open communication and mutual respect, they worked through these challenges, emerging stronger with each hurdle overcome. Their relationship deepened, rooted in trust and understanding. They celebrated small victories together, like Ethan earning praise from his teacher for improved social skills, and supported each other through setbacks, such as Daniel facing a minor setback at work due to market fluctuations. One milestone that stood out occurred 6 months after the wedding, when Ethan invited Clara to participate in a school event called Family Day. Students were encouraged to bring a parent or guardian to share in classroom activities. For Ethan, choosing Clara was instinctive. She had become such an integral part of his life that it felt natural to include her. As they walked hand in hand onto the school grounds, Clara glanced nervously at Daniel. "Are you sure this is okay?" she whispered. "More than okay," Daniel replied with a reassuring smile. "You belong here, with us." During the event, Ethan proudly introduced Clara to his classmates, calling her "my mom" without hesitation. The title sent a wave of emotion through Clara, who blinked back tears as she hugged him tightly. Later, during a group art project, Ethan painted a picture of their family, Daniel, Clara, and himself standing under a rainbow. Beneath it, he wrote, "My happy family." Seeing the finished piece, Daniel wrapped an arm around Clara, whispering, "That's us. Our happy ending." As seasons changed, so did their lives. Spring brought blossoms to the garden, where Ethan and Clara planted flowers they hoped would attract butterflies. Summer saw them hosting backyard barbecues, inviting neighbors, and friends to join in their celebrations. Autumn marked another milestone, Ethan's birthday party, themed around his favorite book series. The highlight of the evening came when Clara presented him with a custom-bound journal inscribed with the words, "For your stories." Ethan's eyes widened with delight, and he immediately began sketching characters inside, declaring, "This is the best gift ever." Winter arrived with snowflakes drifting lazily from the sky, blanketing the world in white. On Christmas morning, Ethan woke up early, bursting into Daniel and Clara's bedroom to announce, "Santa came." Together they gathered around the tree, exchanging gifts and sharing stories over hot cocoa. For the first time in years, Daniel felt the warmth of the holiday season, not just in the decorations or presents, but in the love that surrounded them. Looking back, Daniel realized how profoundly their lives had shifted since Clara entered their world. What had begun as a desperate attempt to heal Ethan's broken spirit had blossomed into something extraordinary. A second chance at love, a redefined sense of family, and a renewed appreciation for life's beauty. Grief still lingered, a quiet shadow in the background, but it no longer defined them. Instead, they carried Emily's memory forward, honoring her legacy by embracing the present and building a future full of hope. On New Year's Eve, as fireworks lit up the night sky, Daniel held Clara close, watching Ethan dance gleefully in the snow. Leaning down, he kissed the top of her head, whispering, "Thank you for everything, for believing in us when I couldn't, for showing me that love can grow even in the hardest places." Clara smiled, her eyes reflecting the sparkle of distant stars. "We did this together," she reminded him softly, "and we'll keep doing it together." As the clock struck midnight, signaling the start of a new year, Daniel knew one thing for certain. Their story wasn't just about overcoming loss or finding love. It was about transformation, the kind that happens when people choose to face life's challenges with courage, compassion, and unwavering faith in each other. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter, light, and love, Daniel understood that they had truly changed everything. For themselves, for Ethan, and for the family they had built together.